Hi. So, I'm here to give you a presentation about very interesting topic and not a trivial one. But I want to start my presentation by apologizing you because my title was a little clickbait and there will be no party. I mean, maybe after party, after presentation, but during my presentation, no party. And yeah, just finish your beers and that's it. Yeah. But the thing is that the word party we will use during my presentation have a little different meaning than you think. It's not about having fun and having party, but it's about being a side of relationship or being a part of a group. So this meaning that we know from the quote from Baldur's Gate, right? You must gather your party before venturing forth. So keep that in mind. Okay, and recently I saw that there is a trend that you need to start a presentation with some biography of karate master or some cool history of from Second World War. So I don't want to be different. Do you know this man? Probably not. And he's Carl Gustav Jung. And actually he's here not by accident. We need him because he's an author of the term archetype. And we will use this word all the time in this presentation. So what is an archetype? Here you can read a very smart definition, but saying it in simple words, it's something universal. It's some universal concept or idea that exists in different environments, across cultures, across history. Let's see it on example. For example, we have hero archetype. And it doesn't mean doesn't matter if you ask people from ancient Greece or from medieval France. Being a hero means that you need to be brave, you need to be strong, skilled, fearless, etc. Probably there will be some differences, and maybe in some cultures the intellectual side is more important, but that remains the same. And guess what? We have also archetypes when it comes to businesses, because businesses exist as long as people exist. And what is a business archetype? Well, when we have a concept that is universal, the concept that exists in businesses, but also in software systems that are working for those businesses. When we have something that has a deep history, so it was in library, and something that is self-evident for domain experts. So if you think that something can be an archetype, ask people who work in business. They need to feel that this is something universal. Okay, and business archetypes comes in pairs. That's why we talk about patterns, because one archetype is not so useful. What is useful is the interaction between archetypes. And we can also see a pattern as a solution to a problem in a given context. So when we will talk about business archetype patterns, we will interpret it in the context of specific business requirements and in the context of a given solution that works for those requirements. Examples. So we have, for example, order, or company, or product. All of those are archetype patterns. And we have party, which we will come in few seconds. How to find them? First of all, you need to know business domain. When you understand how your business works, then you can see that some concepts are universal and you can reuse them. But here there is one issue. It's called system blindness. When you work for some business, what you really see is a solution or a version of an archetype. It's not the general archetype. So most probably you also need to get some additional knowledge. You can read some books, some expert literature or books, and you can talk to experts. Okay. One more thing, the last hard term in my presentation, pleomorphism. So yeah, when you ask DALL-E to create an image for a biological organism called pleomorphism, that's the result. I love it. And archetypes have one very important trait or feature. They are very general. So if you want to use them, you need to adapt them to specific environment or to your requirements. And pleomorphism is a term from biology, as far as I know, that means exactly that, adapting to an environment. You can look at it as you can look at water that you pour into the flask. The flask can have a different shape, but the water remains the same. The essence is the same. It just have different form. And we will see pleomorphism in action later on. Okay, last thing before we go to party, how to apply archetypes. So when you have the knowledge about archetypes from books, from your business, from talking to experts, and then when you also understand your specific requirements that you have, you can try to find a solution. And you do that by selecting pleomorphs. So exactly, you take archetypes and you try to fetch those elements which are needed from this archetype to solve your problems. When you do that, you can try to map those elements that you've chosen to the solution that you will build. That's why most probably you also need to perform some mapping or some translation. And at the end, most probably you will also need to extend the model with some additional elements, because archetype is something that solves some general issue, and usually we have some specific requirements that we need to additionally solve. All right. So we are ready to talk about party archetype. When you enter this phrase, archetype party, to the internet, this is the best image you can find. And actually, if you talk to ChatGPT about archetypes or business archetypes, it's not helpful at all. You need to give him some more context and basically more knowledge about it. And yeah, that's why I think my presentation can be quite useful for you. But what party is? As I mentioned at the very beginning, it represents information about humans or about organizations that your business is working with. We can read a very smart definition from the book, but what matters is that it is a representation. So for one business, you want to represent a people you work with in a more detailed way than in other businesses. And we will also come to this later, but when you start to model a solution for a business, you need to capture the right essence or the right level of details. And yes, we have a UML diagram. Please do. And while you do it, I can tell you that when you miss this concept that there is something like party, then probably you will have many issues in your system. You will have many issues with data quality and the data redundancy, but you will also you can have also more serious issues, such as you can miss some business opportunities, or you can even have some legal issues if you don't store some specific informations that are required. Okay, but yeah, when you look at this UML diagram, you can see that the party archetype is implemented as two classes, person or organization. And that's what you will see very often. So, because your company works with humans or works with another organizations. They have many common parts, but they have also differences. As a common parts, they can have address, both person and organization. They have name, then they can have preferences. But when it comes to humans, probably we can also add some information about body metrics, ethnicity, and these human things. And about organizations, we will add more information about the structure of the company, maybe some legal data, etc. One more thing which is which is common for both, is the need to identify them. Because when you have humans or organizations, the very first question that comes to your business is how to identify it, how to make sure that that's the person we are looking for, or how to make sure that they are unique. There is the concept of identifier, which in Rails world we usually create on the database level, and we have IDs or UIDs. We just remember that it needs to be unique, not null, not changed, shouldn't be updated, and it should bring no significance. But we have additional type of identity. We can use registered identifier. So when we ask somebody else, some third party, to give us the identity of the party. For example, we could use passport number, or we could use social security number. Or for companies, we could use VAT registration number or something like this. But usually, those are not unique. That's what we need to remember about. And we have more elements, like I mentioned, we have address, name, preferences, etc. In the book that I will mention at the very end, description, how the name, for example, could look like. It can have like 10 different fields, but that's not important for this moment. And we can go to the second part of archetypes I want to talk about, relationship. Because as you just saw, the party archetype itself is quite boring, or it's just a bag of data. It's more about structuring and information about parties. But what is really useful and much more challenging is the fact that there are relationships between parties. And it's not so trivial as you might think. Because let's start with the basic fact. When we have two parties and they are in a relationship, we can describe the relationship at different levels of abstraction. For example, when we have a father and a son, we can say that they are connected by a family relationship. That would be a very general way of saying how they are connected, and this will be also symmetrical, because it doesn't matter if it's son or father, it's family relationship. But when we want to go into more details, we can say that the relationship is or parent and son, or even father and son. And when we say that, we capture this relation at the more detailed level. And we will see it in action in a few seconds. But party relationship consists of two basic archetypes: party role and party relationship. So obviously, relationship describes the fact that there is a connection between two parties. But we also need the party role, which says who plays or which party plays which role in a relationship. You can see that on a UML diagram, but I think it's quite complex. But what you can see here is that when we have a role and party relationship, they are connected by two lines, and from the party relationship, there are two connections. Party relationship connects to one role which is a supplier and another role which is a client. And that's because of the lack of symmetry. When we look at the relationships at the very abstract level, we have quite symmetric relationships, like family relationship between father and son. And it's very easy to describe, but usually for the business use cases, it's not so useful, because what is useful is the fact that those relationships are not equal. They are a little different. When you are a son, you have different responsibilities than when you are a father, right? So capturing this asymmetry is what is the hardest part and the most important part here. Okay, and more UML diagrams, but we can see at an example that when we have two sisters, we can describe the relationship between them as sister and sister. And in this case, we don't need party roles, because the relationship holds the information that this is a sisterhood relationship, right? Both sisters are sisters for each other. But when we look at the asymmetric relationship, we can see that we have connections between relationship and role. And on example, it would look like this. We have a party which plays a specific role in a relationship that is asymmetric, because it's a father and son. Saying it from the other side, when we have a relationship father to son, we need to say who is father and who is son, basically. And this is very important because we will see it in the code. And also, it's not easy to grasp the fact that when you have a relationship, you need to explicitly say who plays what role. Because in the business context, usually we think in a symmetric way, let's call it. All right. We have more archetypes. And when we see that party relationship and party role holds too much information, for example, not only the name of the role, but also some description, maybe some preferences, etc., etc., we can try to extract this information into separate models. And we can extract them into the roles. We can have party role type and party relationship type. Yeah, more UML diagrams. Maybe you will need them if you download my presentation, I don't know. But when I will show that on an example, maybe it will be easier for you. Okay. Few more difficult things. When we have parties in the system and relationships in the system, usually there is a question, who can be with whom in a relationship? And your system needs to answer this question. So guess what? We have more archetypes for this. We can introduce a model called party role constraint and party relationship constraint. And they are exactly to answer this question. So party role constraint answered a question if a specific party can play a specific role. And the same with relationship constraint. Tells what party types can play what roles in party relationships. Yeah, it's very complex, but I have a diagram for that. So you don't have to search in internet for these crappy images. And time for Panda. Okay, let's see it on an example. Because I know it's quite complex, and even for me, when I was creating this example, I spent much time on that. So imagine that we need to build a simple system that models Scrum team. So we have some people, we have roles for those people, and we have some projects. And we have for example, we have Bob, who is a PM in a project platform. He can be also architect in the same project, so he can have many roles. And also one person can have roles in different projects. Alice can be front-end developer in platform and can be a back-end developer in scooters. Easy. So that's one thing connected to relationships between them. Another is that every person that is in some project needs to have a supervisor. So when Alice is a front-end developer in platform, she needs to have John as a supervisor for platform, but when she's a back-end developer in scooters, she needs Elon as supervisor for this project. Okay? And when we forget everything that we just heard about those archetypes, we will model quite easy solution. We have table with people, roles, and projects, and we will create just two join tables. Well, maybe a little more complicated than simple join tables, but we have role in projects, which joins a person with role and with project, and we can have table with supervisions. So we have a supervisor ID, subordinate ID, and a project ID. And it works without problems. We have, we can add, for person, we can add has many supervisors, has many subordinates, has many roles, and works without problems. Role in project, so this one join table would look like this. Supervision model would look like this. And in practice, when we have people, we have roles, and we have projects, we just create one more record in this join table, right? Role in project. And for supervisions, we do the same. We just, of course, we should wrap it into some service or some function with a meaningful business name. But what's technically underneath is that we create one more record in a join table. And okay, but imagine we have one more requirement. Projects are also connected together by relationship. Let's say that one project can generate leads to other projects, and one project can have source in other projects. So we would create one more similar table, but that joins projects, maybe origin project ID and destination or project ID or something like this. So what we are doing here is that when we have relationship between parties, we create one more table, which is, maybe it's correct. But let's try to use the knowledge that we have from the very smart book. So this requires a little shift in your mindset. You need to think about what is happening in the system in the context of relationships between elements. So we have projects, roles, and people as previously, but now we see roles. A role that is played by a party in a relationship. So when a person is assigned to a project, it means a person is a PM, for example, or an architect. But there is another side of a relationship. There is a project. So we need to somehow name this role. Let's call it employing project, right? I am a project that employs some people. And with supervision, we can do the same. We have one person which is a supervisor, and we have another person which is supervised, and we can call it subordinate. And we can add those relationships. Let's say that we have a relationship that someone is a member of a project, and another relationship, someone reports to another person. How database would look like? A little easier than previously, maybe. So we just create one more table, relationships. And as we saw on this UML diagram, relationship point to supplier and to client. So we need to have supplier role ID and client role ID. And maybe some name and the description. One more amendment we need to make. We need to add party ID to roles. Because each role is connected to a specific party. Okay. So when we have a person or we have a project, we create this very complex relationship thanks to Rails magic, but you can see that no matter if it's a person or it's a project, this looks the same. Because what it tells is that, well, the person is somehow connected to a relationship as a client or as a supplier. More complex setup is done here because each role which belongs to a specific party has many relationships, supplier and client relationships, and we need to correctly find those relationships. But on the party relationship part, it's also quite straightforward because party belongs to supplier or to client. And to be honest, when I look at it right now, I'm not sure if this is needed polymorphic. Probably not. Okay, let's look at the code. Now we create a person and we need to create a role for this person. We do the same with the project. We create a project and we create specific roles for that project. And then we assign a relationship that connects those roles together. So from the point of doing queries in database, it's much more complex than it was before these parties and relationships. But maybe it's more meaningful. Maybe. The same we have with supervisions. When we create people, we need to create a role for people, and then we can create relations, connect those roles. previously, we could just have person has many projects. Now, we need to fetch those projects by traversing the quite complex relationship, because each project has roles which are connected to relationships. So we find those relationships and we can go from those relationships into the parties that are connected in this relationship. Quite complex, to be honest. Okay, and when you see this example, there is example repository. We might ask a question is it worth it? Well, it depends. And yeah, maybe for this simple example, it wasn't worth at all, because it was just over-engineering. But when you see that what is your business doing requires so many complex relationships or those complex party roles, maybe it would be beneficial, because it's all about this database structure. When you see that you have plenty of different relationships, then adding one more is very easy. It's like maybe even not, and that's it. But yeah, but your business needs to require that. All right, but it can become even more complex, because the benefit of having parties and relationships is the fact that some parties have responsibilities. So actions that are connected to playing some role in some relationship, or some capabilities. So we have another archetype that describes this fact. And we have one more archetype, the last one in this group, which is called party summary. As you see, describing a party and party relationships and party roles might require fetching a lot of information. For this purpose, you could create party summary that captures just the snapshot of most important essential information about party. And here is a good example. When you place an order in an online shop, maybe you don't need to display all information about party. Maybe you just need to display a summary about contact information to party, for example. All right. Okay, you remember this guy, Pleomorph. So what I learned from this party and party relationship archetype is that when you have this complex UML diagram which presents how to use those parties, the most important job for you is to select elements that you need and adapt them to requirements that you have. And you can do that only by having a deep understanding of an archetype. Okay. So if you would like to use party or party relationship in your system, usually you can do it step by step. So at the beginning you need to identify what parties are in your system. Then you need to build relationships between them. When you build relationships between them, you need to capture this asymmetry in relationships. So again, it's good to go back to business requirements and see if the relationships are captured at the correct level of abstraction. Maybe they need to be asymmetrical, or maybe they need to be symmetrical and easy. When you do that, you can assign party roles for those relationships, and then you can add additional elements, such as party role types, party relationship types, or constraints. Okay. So my presentation was based on the very smart book. If you want to see it, you can see it after. And that's it. Thank you. Questions?
Do you use this?
Not yet. Not yet.
It looks like the table which joins everything will be huge enough if you have pretty complex relationships. How to deal with this?
No, actually, when you look at this query to find relationships,
it's like a couple of joins.
it's sorry. It's just joining roles and relationships, and this is subquery, so it's still just one query.
Yeah, I know, but the table, if you scroll to the diagram of tables, yeah, this one, relationships, will be a huge table.
Yeah, yes, it will be.
And whatever you need to take from it, will be like.
But you can use also something like account ID and limit the number of relations to your account, so that it wouldn't be that big problem for database.
Yeah, and I think when you have lots of relationships, you will use also relationship type, and the table itself will be huge, of course, but doing queries that are filtered by specific types will be faster. So, yeah. Okay, thanks.